The ballroom shimmered like a dream, crystal chandeliers casting soft golden light over tables draped in white satin, glasses clinking in rhythm to a string quartet tucked in the corner. Waiters in black coats floated past with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres I couldn't even pronounce. It was elegant, perfect, and it wasn't my world. I stood near the back wall, tugging at the collar of my cheap, rented suit. It itched. The sleeves were too short, the shoulders too tight. A bead of sweat crawled down the side of my temple, and I wiped it away with the back of my hand. My son was getting married today, and as I looked at him, standing at the center of it all, smiling for the photographer, his arm wrapped around his bride, I felt the weight of every year we'd survived. Every sacrifice, every late night, every dinner of instant noodles, every pair of worn-out shoes I let myself keep so he could have new ones, every hour I spent fixing leaky sinks, lifting crates, running groceries, working myself down to the bone just so he could have a better life. Jason. My boy. I should have been glowing with pride. I was, until I saw the place card. There, on the front table, right beneath the gold-foiled sign that read Father of the Groom, sat my name. Daniel Carter, followed by something that looked handwritten in glistening gold ink. I stepped closer. Low education, fake dad. I blinked, confused. Surely this was a mistake. Or maybe a sick joke. I looked around, hoping no one else had seen it. But the chuckles had already begun. Across the table sat the bride's parents. Her father, Gregory, a former university dean, leaned back in his chair with a smug grin. Her mother held a flute of champagne to her lips, trying and failing to stifle a giggle. One of their cousins leaned in and whispered to another. Both glanced at me and burst into laughter. My face flushed. My palms started to sweat. I swallowed hard, trying to hold on to the pride I'd walked in with. But it was slipping through my fingers like sand. I sat down slowly, heart pounding, and turned the place card face down. But the damage was done. I could feel the eyes on me. The judgment. The mockery. I could hear the whispers again. Isn't he the plumber? Did he even finish high school? What's he doing here? This is a luxury wedding. Every word cut deeper than the last. I looked for Jason, hoping maybe he'd seen it and would come over, laugh it off, fix the mistake. But he was still smiling for pictures, talking to the bride's father. He hadn't seen anything. Or maybe he had, and this was just part of the deal. Maybe to belong in her world, he had to leave mine behind. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping quietly against the polished marble floor. The music swelled behind me as the DJ transitioned into a romantic tune. Couples began moving to the dance floor. No one noticed me walking away. At least, I thought no one did. I made it halfway to the door before a firm hand gripped mine. I turned. Jason. His face was serious. No smile. No camera-ready grin. Just a quiet intensity in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Dad, he said. Let's go home. I froze. Jason, your wedding. I said, he repeated. Let's go home. The music stopped mid-note. The DJ looked confused, one hand hovering over the console. The guests turned one by one. Conversations faded. All eyes were on us. Jason turned to face the crowd, still holding my arm. He looked at the bride. Then at her parents. Then he said, in a voice loud and clear enough to cut through the silence, "You just made the biggest mistake of your lives." He didn't yell. Didn't curse. Just said it like it was fact. Then he turned back to me, nodded, and began walking toward the exit, pulling me gently along. No one stopped us. No one dared. The last thing I saw before the ballroom doors closed behind us was the golden card on the table, still lying face down. The city lights blurred past the window as we drove in silence. Rain tapped softly against the windshield, each drop echoing louder in the stillness between us. Jason's knuckles were tight around the steering wheel. His jaw clenched like he was holding something back. I sat quietly in the passenger seat, not knowing what to say. I had raised this boy alone, through storms far louder than this one, and yet tonight, I didn't know what was happening inside him. What had he seen? What had pushed him to walk out of his own wedding? We pulled up in front of the old apartment building, the same weathered red brick place where I had raised him. The stairs creaked under our feet as we made our way up. He had moved out years ago, but somehow he still had the key. I reached out to unlock the door, but before I could turn the handle, his voice stopped me. I saw it, he said. I turned slowly. The nameplate, he added. I saw it before you did. I was standing by the side, waiting to see what you'd do. His voice was calm, but underneath it was something sharper, wounded pride, disappointment, and maybe even guilt. You saw it? I asked quietly. He nodded. I wanted to know who they really were. And now I do. I stepped inside, still stunned. Jason followed and sat down heavily on the old couch, the same one he used to nap on after school. The same couch I had fallen asleep on after too many late shifts. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. Here, he said, handing it to me. A video began to play. I recognized the setting immediately. The wedding hall, earlier in the day. The footage was shaky, but the audio was clear. The bride's father was laughing, his arm around one of his nephews. Give me the pen, he said, chuckling. Let's add a little flair to the nameplate. Something honest. Then came the laughter of the bride's mother. Trailer trash at a 5-star wedding, she said, clinking her glass. But what hurt the most was what came next. Jason's bride, Emily, was smiling, nodding. Honestly, my real father is the man I'm marrying, she said, half joking. The plumber guy? He's just a formality. I couldn't breathe. Jason took the phone back. I didn't want to believe it, he said. I thought maybe they'd accept you for who you are. For what you've done. But they didn't. They humiliated you, Dad. And they tried to do it quietly, behind your back. That's who they really are. I sat down beside him. My hands were shaking, but I didn't say a word. There's something else, he continued. Something I never told you. He stood up, walked to the desk, and pulled out a folder. Inside were papers, graphs, contracts, NDAs, things I didn't understand. I built something, Dad. A business. A cybersecurity firm. I started it quietly during college with a friend. We kept it low profile. No investors. No big offices. Just results. I looked up at him, stunned. But last year, he said, we were acquired. A clean deal. I walked away with more than enough money to buy and bury Westbourne Hospitality if I wanted to. Westbourne? I asked. He nodded. Emily's family business. Hotels, restaurants, golf clubs, the empire they're so proud of. Why are you telling me this now? Jason sat back down and leaned forward. Because tomorrow morning I'm going to show them exactly who they insulted. You didn't raise a loser, Dad. You raised a storm. There was no anger in his voice, only purpose. Like the decision had already been made, and nothing could undo it. They think they were marrying into power, he said. They thought I'd sign a prenup, take their last name, live in their world. But they forgot one thing. What's that? I asked. He smiled, just a little. I already had a name worth carrying. Yours. I couldn't speak. My chest tightened, and my eyes stung in a way I hadn't felt in years. Jason, I didn't raise you to hate. This isn't hate, he said. It's truth. They need to learn the price of disrespect. He stood and walked to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city had gone quiet. Tomorrow, he said, they'll meet the real me. And they'll remember the man they tried to humiliate. By the time I woke up the next morning, Jason was already dressed. A navy blue suit, crisp white shirt, polished shoes. He stood by the kitchen counter with a tablet in one hand and a coffee mug in the other, though the coffee sat untouched. You sleep okay? He asked, glancing at me. I nodded, though I hadn't really. My mind had been spinning all night, between the insult at the wedding and the bombshell he had dropped after. We leave in 30 minutes, he said. I've already called the driver. I rubbed my eyes. Where exactly are we going? Jason walked over and handed me a thick folder. Inside were company reports, financial statements, and legal documents. I scanned the titles: Westbourne Hospitality Group, Silent Shareholder Acquisitions, Voting Rights Transfer Agreements. My head spun. I don't understand, I said. You said you had some shares, but this? Jason pulled out another paper. Dad, over the past year, I've been buying up every available silent partner share in their company. Through shell corporations, trust groups, and private auctions. I've been quiet, strategic, ruthless, even. He leaned in, voice calm but intense. As of this morning, I control 48% of Westbourne Hospitality Group. I nearly dropped the folder. 48%? He smiled. And as of 9 a.m. today, I'll control the majority. How? I asked, stunned. He pulled out one final paper. Her father, the great Gregory Westbourne, was desperate for new investment after a few quiet losses. Last week, one of my companies bought the final 3.5% he needed to stay in control. But the contract has a trigger clause, effective this morning. Jason, are you telling me? Yes, he said. I'm taking over their empire. Legally. Publicly. Today. I stared at my son. This wasn't the boy I raised with scraped knees and hand-me-down jacket. This was a man. A powerful, calculating man. And yet, he wasn't doing this for ego or wealth. He was doing this for me. By 8:45, we were in the elevator of a sleek downtown high-rise. Jason adjusted his tie in the mirrored wall. I stood beside him, still trying to wrap my head around what was about to happen. You're sure about this? I asked. No, he said with a smirk. I'm absolutely certain. We stepped onto the 21st floor, Westbourne Hospitality Group headquarters. The reception area was modern and cold. Staff whispered as we passed. The boardroom was full. Executives, assistants, legal advisors. And at the head of the table, Gregory Westbourne himself. His smug smile returned the moment he saw us. Jason, he said, voice oily. I was wondering when you'd crawl back. The bride is devastated, you know. Jason didn't answer. He calmly placed a thick binder on the table and faced the board. Effective today, he said clearly, I control 51.5% of Westbourne Hospitality Group. Gasp. This, he added, is the documentation. Legal. Verified. You may contact your lawyers if you'd like. Gregory's smirk faded. He reached forward with trembling fingers, flipping through the binder. His face turned pale. You tricked us, he hissed. No, Jason replied. You underestimated us. The room fell silent. Jason stood taller. The man you all mocked, the man you called low education and fake dad. He raised me with more wisdom, strength, and integrity than you'll ever understand. He taught me what real worth is. Not titles. Not degrees. Character. He turned to Gregory, then to the others. Let me be clear. I won't dismantle the company. But effective immediately, Gregory, your wife, your daughter, and every Westbourne family member is removed from the board. Your severance will arrive by courier. Gregory exploded from his chair, veins bulging in his neck. You can't do this. This is my company. Jason's voice remained calm. Now it belongs to the man you spat on, through me. He turned to me, nodded once, then turned back to the stunned board. Meeting adjourned. We walked out in silence, leaving behind gasps, whispers, and shattered pride. Back in the car, I sat staring out the window. I didn't know what to say. Jason broke the silence. I wasn't just standing up for myself yesterday, Dad. I was standing up for you. For everything you did, all the years you worked while they laughed. I couldn't let them win. I looked at him, eyes misty. You didn't have to do this, I whispered. I didn't do it for you, he replied, his voice soft now. I did it because of you. Tech startup founder stuns elite hospitality group with hostile takeover. From wedding walkout to corporate coup, Jason Carter claims control of Westbourne Empire. Plumber's son turns tables on high society in-laws. It was everywhere. Online news, business blogs, social media. Clips from the wedding were surfacing too. The walkout. The stunned DJ. The whispered insults. Everything had been captured, and the internet did what it does best. It spread. By the next day, Gregory Westbourne's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Meanwhile, Jason was calm, unbothered, methodical. He spent the morning in his apartment, going over transition documents, speaking with legal teams, and arranging press meetings. I watched from the sidelines, proud, overwhelmed, and still trying to believe it was real. I had spent decades being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed. Suddenly, I was being called Mr. Carter by lawyers, journalists, and corporate advisors. "Do you want to speak at the press conference, Dad?" Jason asked. "Me?" I chuckled, startled. "No. You're the one with the power now." He paused, then smiled. "Only because you gave it to me." Later that afternoon, we returned to the Westbourne Tower. This time, everyone stood when Jason entered. No more smirks. No more whispered jokes. Just silence and nerves. The boardroom was already prepared. Jason had called a full company-wide meeting. Executives, division heads, investors. Everyone had been summoned. Gregory was there, arms folded, red-eyed and tight-lipped. Emily's mother sat beside him, pale and furious. Emily herself was missing. Jason stood at the front of the room, hands clasped behind his back. "Good afternoon," he began, voice calm, crisp, and deadly clear. "As of yesterday, I am the majority shareholder of Westbourne Hospitality Group. Today, I want to clarify what that means." He clicked the remote, and the screen behind him lit up with charts and numbers. Over the past 12 months, this company has quietly hemorrhaged millions through poor investments, bloated executive salaries, and internal misappropriation. I've brought in a third-party audit team who will begin full investigation immediately. Murmurs rippled across the room. Jason continued, unshaken. "I understand the fear in this room. But I didn't come to destroy this company. I came to rebuild it, on integrity, innovation, and respect." He paused, letting the words sink in. Then he looked directly at Gregory. "However, rebuilding starts with removing rot." Gregory shifted in his chair. Jason pressed a button. A large manila folder was passed down the table by his assistant. Inside those folders are severance details and termination notices for Gregory Westbourne, Annette Westbourne, and all family members employed in any branch of the company. "Effective immediately." Gasp. Audible disbelief. "You can't do this," Gregory said through clenched teeth. "I already have," Jason replied. "And it's legal. Every acquisition, every clause, ironclad." Gregory stood, fists clenched. "You humiliated my daughter. You humiliated us." Jason walked around the table, stopped directly in front of him. "No," he said. "You did that yourselves. When you mocked my father. When you laughed at the man who sacrificed everything so I could rise. This isn't about revenge, Gregory. It's about respect. And now you're learning what happens when you disrespect the wrong man." Gregory's eyes flicked to me, for the first time, without arrogance. Only silence. Jason turned back to the board. "To the rest of you, I know trust isn't earned in a day. But I intend to earn it. And I hope you'll help rebuild something better than the name Westbourne ever stood for." He finished the meeting with a nod, thanked everyone, and left the room with me at his side. Outside, I took a deep breath. The air felt lighter. "You handled that like a pro," I said. "You raised me to be one," he replied. We got into the car and drove in silence for a few minutes before he turned to me. "You know, when I was a kid I used to wish you were rich. That we lived in a big house. That we had a car with working AC." I laughed quietly. "Yeah, me too. But now," he said, "I realize I was the richest kid in the world. Because I had you." I couldn't speak. I just reached over and gripped his shoulder. "Thank you," I whispered. "For making them see." Jason looked out the window at the city skyline. They saw the suit, the silence, the success, he said. But what they'll remember is your name. Had been 2 weeks since the storm. 2 weeks since Jason removed the Westbournes from their own empire. 2 weeks since I stopped being low education in the eyes of the world. Things were quiet, peaceful, even. Jason moved the company's headquarters to a more modest, tech-friendly location in the city's business district. The name Westbourne was removed from all signage, replaced simply by Carter and Company. Hospitality Ventures. He asked me to be part of the advisory panel. I declined. You don't need me in your office, I said. You need me in your corner. He laughed and agreed. Then came the knock. It was a Sunday morning. I was sipping chai on the small balcony of our apartment, watching the street below come to life. Jason was out meeting investors. The knock was soft, hesitant. I opened the door to find Emily. She looked smaller. Not physically, but emotionally, like someone had peeled back the arrogance and left only confusion. "Hi," she said, barely above a whisper. I said nothing, stepping aside. She walked in slowly, clutching a small purse, eyes scanning the humble walls like they were sacred. She sat on the old couch, the same one Jason had studied on for years. "He won't take my calls," she said. "He's been busy," I replied. "I came to talk to you first." I raised an eyebrow. "You insulted me. Laughed at me. Let your family do the same." She looked down. "I know." A long silence. Then she spoke again. "When Jason left the wedding, I was angry. I thought he was being dramatic. But then the world saw what happened and the world sided with him." I said nothing. At first, I was furious that he didn't protect me. But then I realized I never protected him either. Not from my parents. Not even from myself. She looked up, eyes glistening. "I loved him. I still do. But maybe love wasn't enough when I didn't stand beside him." I nodded slowly. "Love without respect is just decoration." She exhaled, visibly shaken. "He deserved better." "Yes," I said. "He did." Another pause. "Did he ever talk about me after that day?" she asked. "He talked about the future. You weren't in it." It hit her like a slap. But she didn't argue. "I didn't come to beg," she said finally. "I came to say I'm sorry. Not just to him, but to you." I looked at her for a long time. The girl who once sat behind a gold-plated table, sneering at my calloused hands, was now humbly apologizing in my tiny apartment. "You're not a bad person, Emily," I said. "You're just a reflection of bad values. Maybe this pain will change that." She stood, wiping her eyes. "Thank you for raising him the way you did," she said. "Even if I didn't see it then. I see it now." Then she left. I closed the door slowly, letting her words linger in the still air. That evening, Jason came home. "Guess who stopped by?" I asked. He didn't flinch. "Emily." "Yes." She said sorry. He didn't ask what else she said. He just sat down, kicked off his shoes, and stretched. "You know," he murmured, "I used to think closure came from revenge. But it doesn't. It comes from realizing you're already far beyond the pain." I smiled. "That sounds like something a man with a billion-dollar company would say." He laughed. "Or a plumber who raised one." 1 year later. The world had changed, and so had our lives, but not in the way the tabloids thought. Yes, Jason's company had exploded in value. Yes, he was now considered one of the brightest minds in modern hospitality. And yes, we had moved into a new home. A bigger one. With 2 bathrooms. And a working dishwasher. But the biggest change was something quieter. Deeper. Jason had launched a foundation in my name. The Carter Initiative. Its mission? To provide scholarships and mentorship for students from working-class, low-education families. People like me. Kids like Jason once was. He told me it wasn't charity, it was justice. The ceremony was held in the city's grand auditorium. Rows and rows of chairs were filled with eager young faces and proud parents, most of them in their best clothes, even if that meant old jackets and shoes they had polished 3 times over. I was given a seat in the front row. My nameplate read, Frank Carter, founder's father and role model. Not low education. Not unskilled. Not working class. Just role model. As the lights dimmed, Jason took the stage. His speech was short but powerful. I was raised by a man who never stepped foot in a college but taught me everything a classroom never could. Hard work, grit, honor, kindness, loyalty, and how to look a man in the eye when you shake his hand. Applause. This foundation isn't built on wealth. It's built on sacrifice. On nights he went hungry so I could eat. On weekends he spent fixing pipes while I studied for exams. On the thousands of silent ways he chose me, over and over again. The crowd rose to their feet. My eyes burned. I didn't cry. But I came close. Jason ended with a sentence I will carry with me until the day I die. Education may open doors, but love builds the house. The applause was thunderous. Reporters clicked their cameras. The mayor shook my hand. A young girl with worn shoes came up and hugged me, whispering, I want to make my dad proud like your son did. That night, when the crowd had gone and the lights were off, Jason and I sat on the curb outside the auditorium, eating hot dogs from a street vendor. Like old times. You know, I said between bites, this foundation, this legacy, I don't deserve all the credit. He looked at me sideways. You deserve more than I could ever give. I laughed. You already gave me everything I ever wanted. What's that? I looked up at the stars. A good man, with a full heart, and his name on something that matters. He smiled, leaned back, and looked at the sky with me. For years, I thought the world saw me as less. That because I hadn't worn a suit or used big words, I was somehow invisible. But in that moment, sitting beside my son, my life's masterpiece, I realized something else. I wasn't invisible. I was the foundation, and no house stands without one. The end.